The first snow comes quiet, then speaks in tiny fractures on the porch. Elena wakes to the sound. Soft, irregular, like someone testing a step. Dawn hasn't risen. The lake is a flat sheet of graphite, the spruce a dark wall. She parts the curtain with 2 fingers. Something large stands in the pale, unmoving. A moose, broad-shouldered, rimmed in frost. Breath lifts in slow white chords. It's not grazing. It's not passing through. It's facing the house. Elena's camera is where it's always been now, on the mantel, lens capped. Her hands find it without looking. The strap scrapes the sweater's wool. She doesn't switch on a light. She doesn't speak. Through glass and early snow, she frames the animal, and, for a moment, the living room falls away, and only the porch remains. The plank where a boy once sat with boots too big. Turning a focus ring with serious care. A gust pushes powder off the railing. The moose doesn't flinch. One ear tilts. The head inclines a fraction, like a nod that lands somewhere between question and recognition. Elena lowers the camera before the shutter. Silence returns. She counts her breath. Outside, steam ghosts and fades. Inside, her heart steadies to match it. Before the quiet, Elena Ward was the one who made noise. Award plaques, festival talks, a field kit that smelled of pine sap and metal. She worked the north like a map you learn by rivers, Dempster Highway gullies, thaw lines along muskeg, a calendar pinned to migration. Her pictures were clean, patient, unfussy, hooves lifting from slush, calves blinking against sleet, a breath beat at -20. People said she had timing. She called it listening. Then winter took a turn and took her son. Noah was 8, all questions and mitten strings, half her height and twice her speed. The accident split time. After the funeral, Elena boxed her lenses, canceled tours, and drove north until the roads thinned to one. A cabin on a Yukon lake, 1 room wide, 1 door facing the timberline. She told no one knew what she used to do. Jonas Hale, the local conservation officer, was one of the few who knew her by work history and by the way she checked the wind before opening a door. He'd drop off notices, bear activity, trail advisories, and once, late in the fall, a pamphlet about seasonal closures for moose calving grounds. They spoke in practicals, distances, weather windows, where the ice blackens first. This story begins after the loudest days, when grief goes quiet and routine fills the gaps. It promises no miracle, no animal reading a human heart. What it offers is a witness, a moose returning to a place it once survived, and a mother stepping back into the light by learning to watch again. The question driving us forward is simple. What does it mean to heal without forgetting, when the only thing meeting you at the door is wild, breathing, and unowned? Morning in the cabin runs on muscle memory. Kettle on, stove breathes, floorboards complain, a soft map of where Noah used to jump the knots. Elena opens the door a hand's width, clocks wind direction, checks for tracks at the tree line. Most days there's nothing but her own boot marks, softened by spindrift. She keeps 2 cameras within reach, a weather-sealed body with a long prime and an old film camera with scuffs along the base plate. Neither leave their shelf, not yet. A notebook sits open on the table, ruled lines with dates, temperatures, sunrise times, and the sort of notes you write when you don't trust memory. Raven Pair, 0712, East Snag. Ice sings at 1840. First fox track, single set. On the far wall, 3 frames remain uncovered. Noah in a red beanie, tongue peeking as he measures a tripod leg. A moose in the midground, shoulder deep in snowweed. The last, empty, hung there after the funeral like a dare. She hasn't filled it. Jonas visits every few weeks, boots thumping snow off the stoop, radio clipped to his vest. He carries current, a map with new closures, a reminder about baiting laws, a heads up that the first snow machines have started running the lake's perimeter. Call if sledders start pushing close to your shore, he says. Moose are moving lower with the cold. He doesn't ask about the cameras. When he leaves, The room grows an inch larger and an inch lonelier. Elena walks the lake edge before noon, counting wing beats when ptarmigans explode from brush, noting how the ice shifts from pewter to milk. She times her breath to her steps, 4 in, 6 out, a field trick to slow a pulse. Sometimes she pauses at the birch where Noah once tied a bright ribbon to mark the good light. The ribbon is gone, the habit isn't. At dusk, the cabin becomes a lantern. She kills interior lights before drawing the curtain. Never backlight yourself, you can't see out. Beyond the glass, spruce spires, low aurora, and a clearing that holds both memory and possibility. This is the stage, quiet, measured, where an animal can enter without fanfare and change the day. The date creeps up the way winter does, quiet, inevitable. November 18th, Noah's birthday. Elena marks it only by not marking it. No candles, no calls, just the kettle and the lake. Before sunrise, snow begins again, finer than yesterday. She nudges the curtain and stops breathing. The moose is back. Same stance on the crushed drift by the porch. Same direction. Toward the door, not the tree line. She checks wind, steady out of the north. She stays inside, 3 meters back from the glass. The animal fills the frame of the window and then exceeds it. Heavy neck, withers high, shoulders carrying the kind of weight that winter respects. It doesn't browse the chokecherry stems. It doesn't paw the snow. It stands, breath clouding, ears cupped toward the house. A tilt of the head exposes the left shoulder. There, beneath the guard hair, a pale seam, a scar the width of 2 fingers. Elena feels the memory like a hand to the chest. 6 winters ago, a fence line half buried near the service road, a moose snared in rusted wire. She'd called it in, flagged the drift with a red bandana Noah insisted on tying himself. Jonas and the rescue techs had cut the wire, talking low, keeping distance. The moose had surged free, stumbled, then steadied. 1 clean leap and gone. She'd filed the photo later and labeled it with a single word, Ashen, for the soot-gray rim along its mane. Now Ashen stands on Noah's morning. First snow lay quiet under its hooves, head angled in that same, not-quite nod. Coincidence has teeth out here. First snow pushes moose lower, closer to the lake. But the exactness of the place, this porch, this step, hooks something in Elena's ribs. She raises the camera, then lowers it without shooting. Instead, she watches the steam lift from his nostrils and dissolve. Matching her breath to his, she whispers without meaning to, "I see you." Outside, Ashen turns one ear, holds, and stays. Grief makes unreliable witnesses. Elena knows this, so she builds a case the way she used to build a story. Evidence first, meaning later. She starts with the photographs. On the table go 3 prints from 6 winters ago. Rescued moose, fence line, the moment post-release when the animal throws its weight forward and the shoulder rolls. The scar is faint in those frames, but it's there. Left side, mid-scapula, a crescent under the winter coat. She takes a new image through the window. No flash, ISO pushed, and overlays the angles. Scar matches in position and arc. First tick. Next, antlers. Mature bulls drop their paddles late winter here, but the architecture year to year stays suggestive. The brow tine on the right with a small fork at its tip, the left main palm broader than the right. In her old set, the right brow tine shows a forked tip. This morning's silhouette shows the same. Not proof, but pattern. Second tick. Tracks. After Ashen departs, 21 minutes by the clock, Elena waits another 10. Wind holds. She pulls on boots, steps off the porch, and measures without stepping into the print line. Stride length, 85-92 centimeters. Track width, splayed at 15. Dew claw impressions lightly set. She photographs each with a ruler for scale, holds a mittened hand out at the edge to prove she kept distance. She logs the numbers next to barometer readings and wind. Indoors, she digs into metadata. The fence release series sits in a backup drive labeled by year. GPS tags show the coordinate where Jonas had parked the truck. 2 kilometers west of the cabin, along the service road. She cross-references with 3 years of first snow dates from her notebook and the phone shots she allowed herself on hard mornings. A pattern threads through. Moose sign appears near her clearing within a week of the first measurable snowfall, often within 48 hours. Noah's birthday often coincides with that front. Coincidence tightened by seasonality. Still, the exact porch pause is new, documented twice now, last year and this morning. She calls Jonas, keeps it clinical. Large bull at my porch, scar left shoulder, same as the fancier animal. Behaving calm, not browsing. Stood 20 minutes, faced the door. Jonas doesn't romance it. Sight fidelity is a thing, he says. They remember where cover's good, where wolves don't like to push, where they shook a bad day. Not faces, places. Could stress memory tie to the release site? She asks. Could tie to the safest corridor he found after the worst bind of his life, he says. A pause. And your porch sits on that corridor. Elena writes it down as a possibility, not an answer. She sketches a map. Tree line, lake edge, her cabin, the old fence line, the road cut. She draws a dashed path from the service road, along a low saddle behind the birch with Noah's ribbon, to the open bite of her clearing. It makes a sort of sense. A moose's path of least risk intersects the only human structure that ever meant relief. Before bed, she prints a single frame from the morning and tapes it under the empty slot on the wall. Not to fill it, just to anchor the question. Tomorrow she'll set a remote camera at the porch line. No bait, no lure, lens masked to cut reflections. Observation only, proof before interpretation. Elena starts with rules. No bait, no calls, no shortcuts. Minimum distance, 50 meters if the animal closes, 100 if she's the one who sees him first. She tapes the numbers to the back of the door with 2 more lines. Observe, don't intervene. Call Jonas if behavior shifts. It feels like a boundary she can keep. She rigs a remote on the porch beam, silent shutter, 15-second interval, motion wake. A second camera goes high in the birch, angled toward the corridor Jonas sketched on her map, lenses masked with matte tape, bearings logged. She doesn't want pretty. She wants a record. First week. Ashen appears twice, both before dawn. The porch camera catches him materialize from spruce shadow, stop at the snow-crushed lip of the step, and face the door. He doesn't browse the chokecherry. He doesn't nose the trash barrel. He breathes, 5 slow clouds, then turns on the near 4 and ghosts back the way he came. Elena plays the clips without sound and writes 3 words under each. Stop. Breathe. Leave. She starts walking the corridor after he's gone, booting the track edge, never overlaying his prints. Measurements go into the notebook. Stride steady in the low 90s. Heart-shaped tracks sharp on cold mornings, edges soft under weak sun. She notes scent posts, bark roughened by rubs, twigs with hair snagged, sap bleed at shoulder height. Sight fidelity is more than a GPS loop, it's habit stacking into intention. On day 11, Jonas radios from the road cut. Wolf sign South Ridge, he says. Single, maybe 2. Not pushing low yet. Elena widens her scan, watching for the split V of a chest drag. Nothing shows, but Ashen's schedule shifts. He moves from pre-dawn to last light, arriving 15:58, then 16:12, as if adjusting around pressure she can't see. The porch cam records a new tell. One ear nicked fresh, a clean notch likely cut by brush or ice. The shoulder scar rides easy when he pivots, no limp. At night she reviews on mute, frame by frame. There's a rhythm to his pause she can't unsee. 4 breaths, small weight shift, ear turned toward the door, head angle down 2 degrees, subtle, consistent. She could be fooling herself, so she builds a control. She turns one remote to face a gap between 2 spruces 50 meters down the corridor, same settings. If Ashen pauses at edges, it's habit. If he pauses only at the porch line, it's a pattern worth naming. 2 evenings of control footage show him moving through the gap, Nose low, neck level, on a line. At the porch, he halts. Pattern holds. Elena lets the word threshold into the notebook. Not mystical. Spatial. Jonas drops by with field forms and a thermos lid. "You're keeping distance?" he asks. A ritual. "Measured," she says, showing ranges and bearings. He studies the stills. "He lost his mate last winter," he says. "Found her on a creek shelf. Early thaw, bad ice. Bulls linger after loss, change routes. People project. But grief makes animals move different. That's all." Not all, Elena thinks, but she nods. She reads the data aloud anyway, keeping her mind inside numbers. 4 porch visits in 12 days. Mean duration 18 minutes. Variance low. Wind predominantly north-northwest. No browsing. No stress signs. No tongue flick, tail flag, or piloerection. Animal choosing a pause point. On day 14, she tries something like reopening a door she sealed. She brings the old film camera to the threshold and stops there, inside. She doesn't lift it. She synchronizes her breath to the steam outside. When Ashen arrives, her pulse flutters and then slows to meet his. Between them, quiet holds. Not ownership, not recognition, just 2 beings sharing cold air without harm. A night of hard cold polishes the lake to glass and packs the snow so tight it squeaks. Elena wakes before the kettle, sensing the stillness that means animals travel easier. Wind is slack from the north. She leaves the cameras where they are and steps to the door. Ashen is already there. He has taken the same position. Front hooves level with the first porch board, shoulders square, breath rising in slow, even lifts. The healed notch on his right ear shows like a small cut in paper. Elena stops just inside, measuring the space without thinking. 6 meters. The glass is a line on a map, nothing more. She unlatches and eases the door open. Cold folds into the room. Her breath fogs and moves toward him like a thin offering. Ashen does not flinch. A weight shift, barely there. The big head angles down a few degrees. Not submission, not challenge. Simply a marking of the moment. Elena keeps her hands low and open. No camera, no sound. She watches for stress, the whites of the eyes, the tongue flick. The tail flag, but finds none. The jaw hangs loose. The ears stay forward and soft. Between them, the air fills with the small clicks and pings of contracting wood and distant ice. A raven crosses overhead and is gone. She counts 4 of his breaths, then matches a 5th. Somewhere beneath habit and training, something in her unclenches. It isn't recognition. Science would deny that. It's tolerance earned by quiet. Don't waste it, she thinks. On the 6th breath, Ashen exhales a thicker cloud with the faintest grunt, more vibration than voice. Elena answers without sound. A slow nod she knows means nothing to him and everything to her. The moment holds, clean and exact, like a shutter half-pressed and waiting. Ashen turns his muzzle toward the tree line, pauses, and looks back once. Quick, sure, a check of the world. Then he steps away, placing each hoof as if choosing the ground for both of them. The door stays open until the clearing empties. Only then does Elena let the latch fall. Her shoulders have dropped an inch she didn't know she was carrying. Tourists find the corridor the way wind finds gaps. By accident, then all at once. Late Saturday, 2 sleds cut a bright noise across the lake and swing up the bank near Elena's birch. She hears the engines first, then sees the riders. Helmets, mirrored visors, a phone held high in a gloved hand. They idle too close, talking loud, the way people talk when the cold makes them feel invincible. Elena steps onto the porch, palms out, stays on her side of the threshold. "Back off the tree line," she calls, steady, not shouting. "Moose moving low. Give 100 meters. One rider lifts his visor. "We just want a shot. He's right there." He points past the birch. Elena tracks the line of his glove and feels her stomach seal. Ashen, half in shadow, stands with his head low, one foreleg planted light. He is not displaying. He is choosing retreat. "Shut your engines," she says. Now. They don't. Ashen bunches, pivots, and vanishes into spruce. The sleds turn, throwing rooster tails of powder, and chase the idea of him for the sake of a clip. By the time the engines fade, the clearing is a torn page, churned snow, a line of deep tracks angling toward the service road. Elena radios Jonas. Sledder's flushed a bull. Scar left shoulder. He's headed west, moving fast. I'm following on foot to the road cut, staying off his line. Copy. I'm 5 out, he says. Keep distance. If he hits the road. They both know the end of the sentence. Steel, speed, blind corners. Elena moves parallel through trees, 30 meters off Ashen's track. She keeps her eyes low, listening for brush break, breath noise, the hollow thud of a hoof on frozen ground. At the service road, the snow is pressed to ice. She sees it. A skid mark, black and sudden. Then a scatter of hair caught on a culvert edge. 20 meters beyond, a shape in the alders. She stops at 25. Ashen lies on his sternum, head up, sides working. Blood freckles the snow where a sharp edge cut hide but not muscle. One foreleg trembles, then stills. He is not bellowing. He is conserving. Jonas arrives in a wash of cold air and stops short of her boot prints. He reads the scene in a glance and calls the vet unit. Possible soft tissue injury, superficial bleed, animal responsive, upright. We need to clear the corridor and assess for shock. To the sledders who circle back, he is harder. Back 100 meters, kill engines. They hear the command voice and obey. Protocol unrolls, eyes toward the ground, bodies at angles, never head on. No sudden arcs. Elena stays at the 40-meter mark, visible but quiet, counting respirations. 8 per minute, then 7. Tongue stays in, ears move, but slow. Jonas sets a soft perimeter with flagging and positions a truck as a windbreak without pushing line of sight. The vet arrives with a kit box and 2 options. Hands-off watch with a corridor cleared, or chemical immobilization to inspect the leg and remove the culvert burr still lodged near the hide. Sedation raises risk, the vet says. Capture myopathy, temperature drop, but if that metal stays, every step will reopen it. Elena's rules sit like stones. Observe, don't intervene, but rules aren't vows, they're tools. She looks at Ashen's breath, thin now, less steam per rise. She doesn't move closer. She meets Jonas's eyes. Do it, she says. I'll keep the line. Jonas nods once. The vet calculates by estimate, 500 kilograms, low-dose medetomidine with reversal at hand. They stage behind the truck, wait for a soft quartering angle, and deliver a single dart to the rump. Ashen startles, surges a step, then sinks into a controlled drowse. Jonas covers the eyes with a dark cloth to lower stimulus. They work fast, gloved hands, short words. The burr comes free with a wet click. The cut is flushed, packed with cold saline to buy time. Core temp is checked, borderline, so they layer a tarp, no heat pads yet, just wind cut. Elena holds the perimeter, watching the tree line, listening for sleds, for wolves, for any shift. She counts breaths, 6, then 5, then steady at 6 again. When the reversal flows, Ashen's ears flick under the cloth. Jonas steps back to 30 meters. Elena steps back to 50. They give the animal a corridor and wait. Choices made. Now they let the wild decide. The first hour after reversal is a held note. Ashen stands, staggers, then squares himself as if assembling the idea of weight from memory. Jonas keeps the corridor clear. The vet watches for ataxia and collapse. Elena tracks numbers because numbers are something you can hold. 6 breaths per minute, then 7, head carriage rising from shoulder line to a notch above. When Ashen takes his first true step, placing the injured 4 lightly, testing, loading, Elena lets a breath out. She didn't know she'd been rationing. They leave the road cut clean, flagging down, hair tuft removed from the culvert edge, sledders escorted to the far bank with a lecture they'll pretend not to remember. Jonas files the incident. The vet radios the case into the district database, tagging it non-lethal interaction, superficial laceration, assisted removal of foreign object. Elena writes the date and time and conditions in her notebook, and under it, one more line. Intervention minimal, corridor respected. The next days turn into a watch that looks like work, but feels like hope. Elena's remote stay up. Intervals increase to catch full sequences. She adds a trail camera 200 meters back from the porch to build context. Entrances and exits, not just the pause. She places it high to avoid altering movement, checks it from a step stool, leaves no scent beyond what the wind demands. She builds a timetable on craft paper taped to the wall. Dates, times, duration of visits, visible weight-bearing scores, 0 to 3, with 3 equal to even stance. The first entry after the injury reads 2-3, the slash an admission of uncertainty. The second entry, 2 days later, reads 2-3. By day 5, she writes 2+ and circles it. Jonas swings by with a field guide's plain talk. Swelling will drop. Watch for heat along the shoulder and fetlock. You won't feel it, but you might see the hair lie different. They argue gently about proximity. He trusts her judgment. She trusts his red lines. He suggests a follow-up remote in the creek draw, where the injured sometimes soak a leg in cold flow if they're smart. She sets one there, angled to catch a profile without forcing a path. Footage tells a story in small increments. Ashen wading shin deep, standing still while slush moves past. Ashen stepping up from the draw with more even load. Ashen pausing at the porch line, ears forward, jaw soft, the new cut sealed and dark. Elena scrubs through hours to gather seconds and starts to see what she used to look for without trying. Micro patterns, the way a shoulder muscles under a winter coat, the barely there twitch that precedes a weight shift. She is learning his recovery like you learn a language, by listening more than speaking. She tests herself with the old discipline, prediction. She writes a time in the notebook each afternoon, based on wind and the day's movements, then waits to see if he hits the clearing within 30 minutes of it. When she's right, she chalks it up to sight fidelity and pressure gradients. When she's wrong, she chalks it up to the wild being wild and allows herself no story beyond that. On the 7th morning, she takes the film camera outside, not to the threshold, just to the doorframe, inside the rules. She meters by eye, sets focus at the 6-meter mark, and waits. When Ashen comes, she doesn't half-press with hunger. She breathes. The shutter's soft clack lands like a footstep in snow. 1 frame. She marks the contact sheet later with grease pencil. Even load. Scar flat. Ear notch clean. Her own recovery shows up in unremarkable places. She sleeps a full 3 hours between checks. She makes coffee without forgetting to drink it. She hears the lake sing at night and doesn't brace. She begins to speak to Noah out loud again. Not the begging kind of speaking, just the inventory of a day. He came at 16:08, or Ravens beat me to the creek by 2 minutes. The house answers by staying a house, not a reliquary. A week after the incident, Jonas brings a district biologist who wants to review the footage and remind everyone of the law. The biologist is careful with words. What you're documenting is movement through a corridor, she says, watching Ashen stand in his quiet square at the porch line on the laptop screen. No conditioning, no lure, sight fidelity under low harassment pressure. Good. Keep it that way. She leaves brochures nobody reads until something goes wrong, and a phone number Elena pins under the rules on the door. Numbers continue to bend toward ordinary. Elena's timetable gains a new column. Head angle at pause. It's absurd and exact. She records 2-degree dip, consistent, then laughs at herself for measuring the unmeasurable. But the data do what data do. Steady her. Steer her away from myth. Healing is a trend line, not a revelation. On day 10, Ashen returns under a sky so clear, the shadows look cut with a blade. He stops at the same board, breathes the same measured breaths. Elena takes one picture, then lowers the camera and just stands. The frame isn't the point. The standing is. The porch is still a threshold. Not a stage. The animal is still his own. The scar is a fact, not a symbol. That night she prints a contact sheet and slips one square into the empty frame on the wall, not to fill it, not yet, but to name a season. Beneath it she writes in a neat hand, as if labeling a specimen. Recovery observed. Both parties. The year rolls like packed snow under a sled. Quiet, inevitable. November 18th returns. Elena wakes before the light, not because of dread this time, but because the air has that hushed weight she recognizes. She kills the stove and checks the rules on the door out of habit more than need. Wind, north-northwest, low. Temperature, knife-edge cold. She leaves the long lens on the table. She carries the old film body, one roll loaded, no spare in her pocket on purpose. She opens the door. Sooty fog lifts from the lake. Ashen stands exactly where he taught her to find him, front hooves level with the first porch board, shoulders squared, the healed notch on his right ear like a small missing note. The scar along his left shoulder is a pale line now, hair grown over, a seam that reads only if you've been reading all year. He is whole in the way winter allows. Elena doesn't step closer. 6 meters is still 6 meters. She waits for the rhythm. 4 breaths, small weight shift, ear turn, 2-degree dip. It comes as expected, and with it a change. His head lifts not to her, but toward the break in the tree line that points at the saddle beyond the birch. A corridor, a way through. This is the last thing she's been holding without naming, whether the porch would keep being a pause, or whether it was a place to say go. She could call Jonas, could log one more controlled instance, could build the case tighter. Instead, she raises the camera only once and frames wider than she ever lets herself. Porch board, lake lip, the mouth of the corridor, the first glow smearing the spruce tips. She breathes with him and makes one exposure, a single sound like a coin set down. Ashen turns. No hurry, no display. He places each hoof as if choosing for both of them again, but this time the line he draws is clear. Across the clearing, into the cut, over the low rise where the old fence used to bind the winter. Elena keeps the door open to hear the soft thud of him hitting firmer ground in the saddle. She doesn't follow. She holds the threshold. The clearing empties. Steam lifts and dissolves. The lake clicks under ice. Elena lowers the camera and feels the pull to fill the empty frame on the wall with the new print. She doesn't. Not yet. She writes the time, 06:19, and one line in the notebook. Returned on Noah's Day. Chose the corridor. Later that week, she will drive the negative into town, make a simple print, no crop, no push, and label it for the first public wall since the funeral. Winter's quiet witness. She will tag the district and credit the rescue unit. But the real resolution happens on the porch, with a door left open to cold and a path left open to wild. She closes the latch gently and says, to the room and to the air he's just vacated, "Thank you for stopping. Go on." The print goes on a public wall that smells of dust and fresh paint. No spotlights, no speeches. A single image at eye level. The porch board in the foreground. The lake lip. Ashen turning toward the saddle. The title card is small, Winter's quiet witness, and the credit line is practical. Date, location, temperature, and below it a note that reads, "Documented under district guidelines. Corridor respected." The rescue unit's name sits beside hers. Jonas stands off to the side, hands in his pockets, nodding once like you do when a thing lands where it should. People pause. Some tilt their heads to find the scar. Most don't. A boy in a red beanie counts the breaths he thinks he can see, and his mother puts a hand on his shoulder without words. Elena answers one question about lens choice and another about distance. She does not tell a story beyond what the image shows. She thanks the biologist for the brochures nobody ever wants to need. Then she drives home before the light dies. At the cabin, winter has settled into the kind of cold that makes wood sing. The empty frame on her wall stays empty by design. She pins a small contact proof under it instead. No crop, just the wide truth, and writes a line beneath. Threshold kept. The rules remain taped to the door. She touches them with the back of her fingers, a ritual more than a check. For a week the clearing holds only fox tracks and the clean, scalloped indentations of ptarmigan wings. She sleeps in stretches. She works small, oil the door latch, mend a glove seam, label a negative sleeve. Grief doesn't lift, it reshelves. The house feels less like a room built around an absence and more like a room with a door that opens. On a morning of air so clear it cuts, she hears it. Not engines, not wolves, just the soft compression of snow under deliberate weight. She steps to the window and sees movement at the far edge of the corridor, beyond the birch. Ashen stands in profile at a distance that keeps both of them honest. He doesn't come to the porch. He doesn't need to. The head angles, 2 degrees, the same small mark of presence, and then he holds, giving the clearing a long, calm look. Elena raises a hand not to wave but to show it empty. A small human gesture. No ask, no take. The moose turns back to the timber and goes, soundless as a decision already made. On the porch, a single new print dents the snow at the edge of the first board. Not a step, just a touch. The light press of a hoof as if confirming a line. Elena leaves it undisturbed until wind erases it. Some returns are like that. Not arrivals, just acknowledgments. She closes the door softly and lets the house hold its quiet. In the end, nothing mystical happened. A moose kept a root. A mother kept a threshold. Breath met breath on cold mornings, and the house stayed a house. Healing looked like this. One frame, one pause, one door opening without taking a step. If the story leaves anything behind, let it be a practice. Look before you enter a space. Keep distance that protects both sides. Notice the small nods, the 2-degree head angle, the single hoof mark at the porch edge, and answer with restraint. If you live where moose travel, learn the rules that keep them wild. Never bait or call. Give at least 100 meters. Leash dogs. Kill engines near tree line. Report injured wildlife to local officers instead of approaching. Use optics, not proximity. Support the people who do this work for real. District conservation officers, vetted rescue units. The folks who show up in the hardest weather and leave without fanfare. Donate if you can to Yukon Wildlife Rescue or your regional equivalent. Volunteer for trail signage days. Share corridors, not coordinates. We filmed and recorded with permits and guidance, following Canadian wildlife regulations and the district's corridor policy. Interventions were performed by licensed personnel. Please don't replicate field procedures at home. Call your local wildlife agency for advice and assistance. Some witnesses never speak, but they mark a way back. Freedom isn't ownership. Returning isn't retreat. On certain mornings, the quiet itself is proof. This is Paw Prints and Stories. Stay gentle. The wild remembers.